Welcome to the show, it's time to unwind. With Dave B and Dave D, the best brews you'll find. Craft beer talk, it's a passion we share. From hops to malts, we're taking you there. This is Daftaboutcraft, where the good times flow. Sit back and relax, let the flavors glow. Brews, news, and views, we've got it all right. Cheers to craft beer, let's raise it tonight.
Daftaboutcraft, the craft beer podcast.
Welcome along to the show. It's me, Dave D.
And me, Dave B.
What have we got coming up, Dave?
Well, first of all, I'd just like to apologise. This episode is only late because of me and me only. We were all set, ready to tidy it up, and then I got tonsillitis on the eve of recording it, so we just had to put it back a few days. So for anyone that's been out there patiently waiting, the delay is all on me. In terms of the episode itself, the main guest is Matthew from Blackjack Brewing in Manchester. Now, when you think Manchester, it's easy to think Cloudwater, Track, Wander Beyond when they were based there. Maybe not so much Blackjack. There has been some lovely weather, and with lovely weather comes lagers, and Blackjack couldn't be more into lager if they tried. They have no less than 7 available on their website. We didn't try all of them in one sitting. We tried a few, didn't we, Dave? And it was just really good to talk and drink lager.
Because sometimes you just say lager and you think, oh, Peroni or Stella, but there's so much more to lager than that. Matthew talks us all through them, and we find out quite a lot. It's interesting, and also plenty about Blackjack as well, which we didn't know about. Now, we're quite excited for Hype or Tripe, because one of Dave's favourite beers ever, I reckon, features in Hype or Tripe, but not as you know it.
If I had Desert Island discs for beer, I think I'd be quite happy having Titanic Plum Porter as one of them that, you know, just had to have it for the rest of my life. And Titanic, who are celebrating a big anniversary this year, they have made a nitro version of it. I think it should be really good. I don't see how it's going to go wrong particularly, but I am very excited to try it.
We've had Plum Porter on cask in the pub. We've had Plum Porter in a bottle. We've had the Grand Reserve in a bottle. But nitro style is something completely new. So we want to love it, but we'll find out in Hyper Tribe whether we do. We've also got tried and tested favourite beers since when we last talked to you. Mine personally include a couple of beers that I found on a recent trip to Manchester. But we'll start off, as we always do, with Brew to Me. Dave, where are you taking us this time?
Last episode, we went to Bridlington with a heavy dose of German influence. This time, we're going to Bladen up in Newcastle upon Tyne with a heavy dose of Canada.
Oh,
I seem to be finding breweries that have got a bit of a fusion heritage. And the brewery in question is Thirsty Moose Brewing Co. And as I say, based in Bladen, but they are with Canadian heritage, which we'll hear more about from Max in due course. They do various styles of beers, and so I've got Canny Cannock, which is a maple brown ale. Maple syrup Canada, Newcastle brown ale.
This sounds fun.
En route to recording here, I had a chocolate bar that used to be called Marathon and sounds like Knickers. And I did think of this beer when I was having it. I thought, yeah, okay, if this works, I should be getting maple caramel tones and maybe a bit of nuttiness. Poured a lovely head, maybe a hint of sweetness, not loads.
Like you say, I'm going to presume quite a bit of nuttiness going on here, and the sweetness of the maple, obviously.
Because that's come out the fridge. My instinct says it just needs to warm up, because I'm not really getting too much flavour off it yet, but I don't think that's the beer. I think it just needs to warm up a little bit. So while it does that, should we just hear from Max for a bit more about Thirsty Moose?
Hello, my name's Max. I'm the head brewer and owner of Thirsty Moose Brewing Co. and the creator of our flagship beer, Canny Cannock, which is a maple brown ale. I started Thirsty Moose Brewing Co. in 2022, just after COVID had blown over. My thinking was that everybody had been cooped up in the house for so long, there'd be a boom in beer drinking. It felt like the perfect time to strike, but what actually happened was the opposite. There was mass pub closures, and the cost of living crisis made it even harder for people to get out and enjoy a pint. Despite that, we pushed through the difficult times and went on to get customers all over the UK, picking up several awards along the way, from SEMA beer competitions, Camera beer festivals and other independent events. The name Thirsty Moose was inspired by my dad's side of the family. They're Canadians, and we felt the name captured the fun, friendly, adventurous and hard-working spirit of both Canadians and people from the northeast of England. In terms of brewing, we blend traditional British brewing with new wave American techniques and ingredients to create interesting and refreshing beers. This brings us to our flagship brew, multi-award-winning Canny Canuck. It's a 4.5% maple brown ale, brewed with British malts and hops, real maple syrup and maple extracts. It pours a deep brown with just enough bitterness to balance out the maple sweetness and gives it a smooth finish. You can pick up flavours such as maple, chocolate, dried fruits, caramel, and a biscuity malt. If you're listening to this and you're wondering where you can try our beer, head over to our website, www.firstymoosbrewingco.com. And if you do happen to grab a can of Thirsty Moose or spot us on tap at your local bar, drop us a line and let us know what you think. We'd love to hear from you. Big thanks to Daftaboutcraft for shining a spotlight on our brew, and we hope you enjoyed the beer. Cheers.
Thank you very much, of course, Max. I didn't know whether to expect Max to have a Canadian accent or a Northeast accent, but there's no doubting which one of those two it is, that's for sure.
I think there's possibly a little twang on the end, but it's very much Northeast over Canada, isn't it? Anyway, while we were listening to Max, I have let that just warm up a little bit, and I am picking up some of what he said in the tasting notes there. There is maple sweetness, and it's not sickly sweet. It's sort of just hanging around in the background. Definitely biscuity malt. Definitely a bit of toffee for me and caramel. I've got 2 other cans, one of which is earmarked for you, Dave. I think my other can I'm going to make sure sits out for a little while and just comes up a bit more to room temp. You know, brown ale really is a style which you would sort of associate as being a bit more room temp, isn't it, rather than sort of straight out the fridge. So that's a little bit of an error on my part, just sort of too eager to get on with trying to taste it because it's been sat there for weeks now and I've been really looking forward to it. But I do like it. Max mentioned the shop. There's something for everyone on there. They've got a blonde, they've got a session IPA, they've got an oatmeal stout, a couple of pales, an IPA, an American pale, and if you wanted a mixed crate of 12 cans, 440 cans, you could get them for the princely sum of £34, which seems pretty good value to me.
That sounds pretty good. That sounds like an offer we'd be all over.
So no, first impressions, very positive. I like this beer. I suspect while you're drinking your one and telling us about it, I'm going to get more and more out of my one because it's just going to keep getting up to the right temperature.
Yeah. Why don't we let you keep sipping away on that? Talking of influences from different places, I am going to Belgium, to near Antwerp, for a brewery that has its roots in Greenwich in London, but is now based in Belgium, and it's called SE10 Brewing. I've got to say, before we go any further, huge, massive thanks to Sven from SE10, because anybody who's tried shipping cans abroad in recent times, from either here to Europe or the other way around, will know it's not very easy. And what we actually did in the end was Sven came over to London and posted them to me from London. I don't think he came over just for that. I think he was doing a little trip over here. But he brought some cans with him and posted them because that was just by far the easiest thing to do. It's an utter nightmare now trying to get beer across Europe.
Yeah, I'll tell a pretty similar story for Brew to Me on the next episode. So fingers crossed at some point this talk of the EU Brexit restrictions being made slightly easier, perhaps, with all these EU trade deal that was sorted out last month. We might get a bit of a trickle-down effect that for Herberts like us, beer might be able to get into our hands easier again from Europe, which would be nice because there's so much good stuff over there which we used to be able to get hold of and now is, as you say, an absolute pain.
Yeah, it really is. So I was delighted when these cans turned up. I think it was 5 or 6 different beers. Got really striking artwork.
Yeah, that reminds me of that pattern in the background of whatever reason. It reminds me of Evil Twin.
Yeah, I can see what you mean, actually, yes. Yeah.
Cool cans, though. Very cool cans.
Yeah, these are printed cans rather than cans with the labels put on. You're starting to see a few more of those around now. Now, I've got a selection of beers in front of me. I've got a triple, Bombay triple, 9.5%. I've got a 7% Motueka IPA, an 8% dip. I'm not going to go in that big this time. I've been known to do it before, but not now, because we're recording this at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
You can see the Belgian influence, though, can't you? Everything coming in on the high end of the ABV.
That's it. And that's the thing to note with SE10. They are very much Belgian influenced. However, they do still keep a big eye on what's happening over here, and they're into their hazy pales as well. So I'm going to have Urban Haze, which is a 4.9% session IPA. Although at 4.9%, I'm not sure how sessionable that actually is.
It's on the higher end, isn't it? It'd be one of those, if you had it without knowing, could be a little bit dangerous if it is really good and it goes down very quick.
That smells lovely and fruity, opening the can there. And that is a lovely, lovely shade of yellowy orange with a lovely head full of loads of little...
Looks like you've put it in a Belgian-style glass as well to stay true to form. Nice.
I have actually, yeah. I was a little bit of thinking about it, and I did. Let's see what it tastes like. Yeah, that really is very sessionable, despite being best part of 5%. Very, very minimal bitterness. That's good. That's really nice.
Does it say on the can what hops are involved in this?
It doesn't, and I've had a little look around and I can't identify it. I suppose I could try and guess, couldn't I? But, well, actually, while we're talking about what's in it, why don't we listen to Sven, who sent us a very, very comprehensive voice note over.
This is Sven, brewer and founder of SE10 in Hoboken, Antwerp. I'm born in Belgium, but lived for quite some time in the UK, in 3 cool cities, Leeds, Manchester, in London. The last job I had in the UK was, I was a brewer for Brewdog in one of the brew pubs, plus I was also managing kind of the brew pubs and the cider production, not the commercial part, but the technical part. Because of my time in the UK, the SE10 brewery is very much inspired by the amazing UK craft beer scene. In my time at Leeds, there was no Nord Brewing or Northern Monk yet. However, Nord Bar was already there. It's fair to say I've spent quite a lot of money in there, being there almost every other weekend. But probably with the profits they made out of me, they managed to set up their own brewery, which is fine by me because it ended up being a great brewery, Nord Brewing, now part of the Kirkstall Group, of course. At my time living in Manchester and afterwards in London, I've got acquainted with many of the great breweries who are still operating in the UK. It was a great time. So whilst I was working for Brewdog, working and brewing for Brewdog, the idea of setting up my own brewery started to take shape in my head. And I was looking for a suitable location. I was looking mostly in the Greenwich area. Didn't find a location, but came into contact with people from Hoboken. Long story short, I ended up moving back to Belgium and setting up the brewery in Hoboken, which is the most southern district of the city of Antwerp. The brewery itself is located within a bigger location named the Blikfabrik. The Blikfabrik is in fact an abandoned factory owned by a property developer who within 10, maybe 15 years will tear everything down and start to gentrify this area. But at the moment, in the halls of this factory are all sorts of startup and creative businesses. There's a bar, there's lots of activities for kids, there's a skate park. It's a really cool environment. There's also, so the purpose of SE10 is to provide the people of Antwerp and Belgium a modern 21st century craft beer experience. So what does that mean for SE10? That means, one, we brew all the beers ourselves in our own established microbrewery. We focus on modern beer styles and modern interpretations of classical beer styles. Modern beer styles meaning about 75% of our outputs are hazy IPAs. But other than that, we also have a Pilsner on keg. And sometimes we venture into the German Hefeweizen, Dunkelweizen style, etc. We provide beer in kegs and cans. Cans, especially in Antwerp, was something that barely existed. There were some very small brewers with very small setup who were manually putting their beer in can. But in terms of a microbrewery, there was none. In Brussels, there are a couple of breweries already who provide modern beer styles and a modern beer experience in can. Most famous is the Brussels Beer Project, but you also have La Source, Brasserie Cerealiste. And there are a couple of others over there. But in Antwerp, at my size, I'm really the first one. Other than that, with SE10, we also like to focus on sustainability. So for the deliveries within Belgium, I only do metal returnable kegs. I do not do key kegs. And we also do cans. The cans actually, in the first place, is really to provide the customer with this 21st century craft beer experience, as can be experienced abroad, as Belgium is still mostly a bottle market. However, aluminium and metal is actually endlessly recyclable. In contrast to bottle, it's also lighter to transport. So in that way, you also save costs on energy and save energy. So cans are more sustainable than bottles, which is one of our values. In the brewery, the heating is with steam because in the long term, this is also more efficient in terms of energy consumption. The cooling water from the heat exchanger is fully recovered. Also, our spent grains are reused and turned into biogas. So we try to, as much as possible, to turn our waste products into something that becomes something good. As you know, Belgium is an amazing beer country with some of the best beers available in the world. The Trappist beers are second to none and can't be beaten simply. Also, we have some of the best triples in the world, all in bottles, all classic. In terms of IPA, there are breweries who provide IPAs to the consumer. However, the IPAs that are being done in Belgium are like 95% of the time not even remotely close to what you would experience abroad in terms of the amount of hops used. And this is where SE10 really is making a difference. We're really making the new IPAs bold and punchy. We all love the cool hops coming from the US and from New Zealand. It is more expensive to make, that is true, more losses, but this is really the experience that SE10 wants to offer to the beer lover in Belgium. In terms of distribution, the beers of SE10 are available in all craft beer bars in Antwerp, Leuven and Brussels. I'm not available yet in any other cities. I do all the deliveries myself, which makes it a bit hard. The brewery is a 10 hectoliter brew kit with tanks of 10 and 20 hectoliters. At the moment, it's a one-man operation. I'm quite happy with it, given the economical situation. So within Belgium and probably whole of Europe, especially the bar culture is really going down, unfortunately. Even in the city centers around the main square, in the weekend, sometimes bars are closing at 10 p.m. This is something unseen. So the on-trade beer consumption is really plummeting. People still drink, but more and more is shifting towards off-trade. The biggest challenge is now that I'm established in the craft beer bars, to enter in the regular bars. When I did an audit a couple of years before, when I hadn't started yet with SE10, most of the bars still had a free tap available. By the time I started trading with SE10, even the free taps, when I went back to the same bars, were then occupied by the big brewers, meaning in the cafes and the bars, almost all taps now are occupied by the big brewers, being AB InBev, Duvel Moortgat, Heineken. This of course makes it very challenging. To enter the keg market in the regular bars, I knew would be a challenge. I am slowly entering this market by becoming beer of the month here and there. Slowly the name is growing, and let's see where this ends up. We have a core range of 3 IPAs. Urban Haze is our session IPA, the Dreamliner is our IPA, and the Commuter Planet is our double IPA. For the Dreamliner and the Commuter Planet, we keep the name, but we make versions every time. So version 3, version 4, by changing the hop combo and sometimes also slightly changing the malt bill. Whilst the non-beer geek gets acquainted with the name Dreamliner, the beer geeks are always looking for something new. So for them to have a Dreamliner version 4 to compare with the version 3 also makes it appealing to them. Other than that, we do one-offs. Like for instance, now we had a Motueka, a single hop beer brewed with, you guessed it, Motueka T90 and Cryo, which was amazingly well received and sold out straight away. So this is something we will keep doing in the future next to our core range. Part of the core range now as well is the Bombay Triple, a modern and international interpretation of a Belgian classical triple. Last year I was for 1 month in July in India to help to set up a larger brewery there. The brewer from that brewery came over to SE10 in Hoboken, and we brewed a Belgian triple together, not with a Belgian yeast. We just used a mix of 2 American yeasts. But in order to get the spiciness back into the beer, we used Indian peppercorns and Indian kaffir lime leaves. So it's definitely not a tikka masala triple. You taste it's slightly different than a normal triple. Still very good, very drinkable. And as part of the recipe, we also used Indian poha rice, basically, which is flaked rice. All the Indian ingredients were bought here in the shop in the town next to Hoboken, where there's a large Indian community. At the moment, I do not export my beers outside Belgium. In London, there are a couple of breweries aware of SE10 in Antwerp, mainly because of my previous regular presence at the London Brewers Association meetings. So I'm still keeping contact with some of the brewers and brewers in London. So it would be cool at some point to have some of these cans also for sale in London, but I appreciate it's a crowded market. So it's definitely not the main purpose of SE10. The main purpose is still to establish it as a modern 21st century craft beer brand in Antwerp and in Belgium.
Isn't it interesting when we get voice notes from European brewers, they're often quite different to the ones we get from British brewers?
Yeah, it's strange. I'd say there's almost more of a, even though I'd have no idea how wide a used medium it is for that kind of thing, the European ones seem to lean into it a lot easier. and sort of quite happy just chatting away in that manner. Whereas I think perhaps because we're British, the idea of talking into your phone and doing a voice note feels a bit alien. I mean, I do it a lot for work and I send it to other people, and if it's outside of work, I do get a bit of, stop doing that, you're an idiot.
On the last episode, we had Belschnickel, who went into a lot of detail, really wonderful. And before now, what was the other German one we had with the AI-generated voice note? Do you remember?
Atelier, whose beers, just go back to what we were talking about previous with getting beers. Oh my goodness, I'd love to get their beers again. That was so good.
And while we're talking about Belschnickel, I must say a massive thanks, because Kevin listened to our last episode and to our review, and he heard Dave saying that I was really jealous because I hadn't got a bottle, and he was so kind. He's actually since sent me a bottle as well, which is downstairs in the fridge waiting for us to drink. So thanks so much for that. My wife has got grand designs on drinking that one night.
You won't be disappointed.
Anyway, back to this beer, SE10 Session IPA. Yeah, all over that. Can't wait to try the others. This is really good. And it's a shame that other people over here can't get hold of their beers more readily.
Well, while you've been drinking, I've sort of carried on with my Thirsty Moose, and it has improved isn't the right word. It's just got up to temperature, and the more brown aleness has started to come through a bit, so it's got a bit fuller. The maltiness is coming through as well. Not very bitter.
Isn't it interesting? I mean, we know that beers change when they get up to room temperature. We know this, but sometimes we kind of forget and we start drinking it and we think, yeah, I'm not sure about this. But if you actually drink it as it was intended, it tastes as it should.
Yeah, and it's a good beer. It's nice. I can see why it says sort of flagship, and it makes me want to try their other beers. So for me, Thirsty Moose, nice hit, and sounds like SE10, if you were able to buy more, you'd do it very easily.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah. Excellent. Very happy with those.
This is Daftaboutcraft, the craft beer podcast. Daftaboutcraft, you're tuned into your favorite beer podcast.
Is lager just a summer beer? We thought we'd explore this a little bit more, so we've recruited Manchester's Blackjack Brew Co. to help us, because their current range of beers includes an impressive 6 styles of lager. So welcome to the podcast, Matthew from Blackjack. How you doing?
Hi there, I'm doing really well. Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's lovely to be able to come on to a podcast and chat about lagers.
I think lagers are sort of much maligned style, because you think of macro lagers in your traditional pub and it stops there for most people, but of course there's so much more to it.
Well, yeah, 100%. People are coming around a lot more now in the craft world, but there was certainly a lot of snobbery about it in the past, which we really didn't like at Blackjack. So certainly a couple of beers from our core range, like our Pils and our Hells, while being really delicious beers, they're not designed to be these crazy things that are going to score high on Untappd. They're made for people to enjoy, to drink, and to not be overthinking them. Some of the other beers that we're going to discuss today have a little more to them, but at its heart, lager is something that I think is kind of brings people together. So when people are snobby about people going to the pub and drinking some of these macro lagers, I really don't like it, because actually what they're getting at a lot of the time is people's relationships are built around going to the pub for this kind of lager. So while I think ours are particularly good and our brew team have done an amazing job on it, the idea of lager bringing people together, I think, is a pretty big tradition, both in the UK and in Germany and European countries.
Yeah, and I think that probably shows with what we'll get to, that you don't just cover like what the UK would maybe consider a standard lager. We're going to go on a bit of a trip around Europe with some of the styles. But it's also just worth pointing out as well that there's that slight snobbery attached to lager, as we've talked about, but also lager's not easy to brew. It's nowhere near as simple as people might think it is.
If anything, I think it is the sign of a good brewery if they can make a good lager. So a bit of my background. So with Blackjack, I do a little bit of everything. I'm not on the production side of things, but I kind of on the ops side and events and social media, and mainly because I'm a big fan of the brand. Prior to working for Blackjack, I was at Cafe Beer Moth, working there and buying beer. Blackjack were super interesting brewery because of how much they've changed in the last 13 years now. So to see where they'd kind of come from and to where I jumped on board was a big journey, and lager being a big point of interest. In the early days, they just couldn't make a good lager. The kit wasn't built for it. They couldn't really cold ferment. So it's in the last maybe 5 years since we've had a good kit that we've been able to produce these really great lagers. So yeah, you're right. It is one of the hardest beer styles to do well.
Yeah, you've got 6 different lagers in your range, which, I mean, not many breweries have that many. Even breweries that specialise in lager don't tend to have that many different ones on offer.
It's more akin to sort of Germany.
Yeah, I think that the brew team, it's a little bit of a kind of running joke among breweries these days that brewers themselves don't drink pale ales or double IPAs or whatever, but they drink lager. So I think a lot of it stems from brewing what we'd like to drink, but also that in recent years that the appetite for more interesting lagers seems to be increasing as well. So that's where the range kind of comes from. We've got your pills and your hells. When somebody comes into a pub and asks for a normal lager, which we get asked a lot, again, people are kind of snobby about that. But actually, I know what they mean when they want a normal lager. And so at least 2 of ours are brewed to be exactly that. Just really delicious examples of like crisp and clean styles. So certainly the hells and the pills are these normal lagers.
Those kind of styles, you've sort of summed it up. They'll be crisp, they'll be clean, they should be light. You can get a little bit of different flavours on the end of them, but essentially they're there to be drunk, aren't they? They're there to be enjoyed. Not think too hard about it while you have it.
Sure.
Move on to the next.
And they do taste great. The Pils has got a really nice Lubelski Polish hop in it, so you get that floral herbal note. But if you weren't to think about it, you wouldn't necessarily go there. When you do know, you pick up on it. But yeah, it's the subtleties of lager brewing that make it such an art, really.
There's nowhere to hide, is there?
There really isn't, no. So Blackjack as a company, we have bars in some of the market towns around Manchester. And in the early days, we couldn't serve our lager there just because we didn't have a lager good enough. So that was a big reasoning behind the push for it, is that we wanted to be able to serve our own beer in our bars. When you actually come down to it and look at the figures of what people are drinking, it is still heavily lager based. So we wanted those products to be as good as they could be.
So you sent us 6 beers each, and you've narrowed it down to 3 that you want to focus on this evening. Which one should we start on? Well, like Dave's already started. Look, I can see him sipping away, and he's a dark lager.
Well, no, I'm not. I took a gamble what order we go in. For the peek behind the curtain, I got 50% of the amount of garage, and I've left one of the ones that you want to talk about behind, but Dave's got it. So I reckon you'll say to Dave, have the Italian Pilsner, but I've got the Vienna Lager on the go.
I'm happy to go for with the Vienna Lager.
I've got mine right here. Dave's already tucking into his.
So the Vienna Lager is, this is definitely one of my favourites and one of my favourite styles. So the beer is called Pit, named after one of our brewers, Tara. Her son is called Kit. Around the time when he was born, she wrote this recipe. It's a love letter to her child, and it's a style that she really loves. With Viennas, you're expecting a nice sort of rich, dark amber colour, slightly sweeter profile than you might get with Pils or a Hells, more malty, kind of malt forward flavours. And Tara made this, and since she brewed it, we've been doing it every year since, because I just think it's a lovely beer.
Traditionally, at what time of year would you brew this, or is this brewing all year round?
So this is one of our seasonals. So we tend to brew it in autumn. I think it suits the autumn, that dark, slightly more fuller flavoured beer. So we tend to brew it, I guess, October sort of time. It's that sweetness on the end of the palate, I think, with a Vienna Lager that really gets me. What do you guys think?
That sweetness really comes through, doesn't it, Dave?
Yeah, it definitely does everything you describe. It's a style I am familiar with because there's obviously the biggest sort of, when you think of Vienna Lager, if you do drink a fair bit of beer or lager in general, you think, I think of Modelo. Like, they'd be the one that pops to mind immediately because they're the sort of biggest selling one around the world, I would guess. Theirs would be a bit darker, I would say, than yours.
Yeah, the Modelo is darker.
But it's still very distinctively nailed the style with that sort of slightly caramel biscuity sweetness, but it's not overpowering, is it? It still has the essence of lager that you want to keep going back to it and keep drinking through. It doesn't go, it's a bit too sweet for me, I'm going to have to take a pause on it.
That's the thing with all of the lagers, is that drinkability. So even when they're slightly off-piste and a more interesting style, drinkability is the key, really. And I think that's a sort of Blackjack ethos in general. We've dabbled in so many styles over the years and eventually sort of strayed away from the higher ABV or the really out there styles, which we love. As a brewery, it felt right to to be brewing stuff that is drinkable, because Blackjack as a company has always been rooted in pub culture. When it was started, it was about that classic British pub and wanting to make a beer that would sit well in there. So while Blackjack started off certainly on the more traditional front with bitters and blondes and your English styles, the lager is equally as much a pub beer as any of those. So yeah, Vienna, although it is a little richer, I could certainly have more than one, I think.
I'm intrigued when people come into your venues who aren't familiar with the different genres within lager. You might give them a pils and more, like you mentioned before. If they get onto this, what do they then make of a beer like this?
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Because we've got so many lagers, we've always got a couple on in the venue. So when people are asking what lagers you have, it is really nice to be able to give them something that they maybe haven't tasted before, or is reminiscent of something that they have tasted but not for a long time. A lot of people have been on holiday to Austria or the Czech Republic or Germany, and they've tried these beers and they've liked them, but not followed it up in any meaningful sense at home. So because it's not an out there style, I feel like it has a nostalgic value sometimes for people. I certainly remember holidays as a teenager in Austria and drinking similar things and enjoying the taste. To be able to brew those sort of styles in the UK is awesome. So then, yeah, when people come up to the bar and they want to drink a lager, actually something a little different doesn't put people off as you might think. The stereotypical lager drinker, I think, is much fewer and far between than people make out. People are interested in something that tastes good and has had care put into it. So yeah, the Vienna I actually think is quite an easy sell.
It sounds like you've got a really refreshing attitude when it comes to punters as well. I remain convinced that a lot of beer drinkers in this country are sort of put off by the whole craft beer thing because they're a bit wary of it and they don't know what to expect when they go into these venues. They don't want to look like a fool. But it sounds like you've really embraced that.
100%. I've always hated the snobbery side of craft beer, which is only from a small minority, but it becomes this idea that people have of the industry. And actually, the name craft is off-putting. I think when you have that conversation with people and you describe it as independent beer or indie beer, then it gets to the root of it, really, because then when you're chatting to them and they say they like these certain macro lagers, when you're kind of offering them a similar product with much better ingredients that's actually made by somewhere on their doorstep, then they're really open to that.
I'm also intrigued by the whole Manchester thing. Obviously, based in Manchester, there's a massive indie beer scene. How do you fit into all of that?
Yeah, Blackjack's been a funny one because we've been around for longer than some of the more well-known breweries like Cloudwater and Track. We slot into a slightly, I don't know how quite to describe it, but people see us as a traditional brewery, first and foremost, aligned with people like Marble. But certainly in recent years, as we've been developing things like our lager ranges, and we haven't spoken about hazy beers or New England, but actually we're developing those as well because, again, that's a style where craft beer has sort of gone mad for. And we were a little reluctant at first, I think, to sort of jump straight into the bandwagon, and we wanted to get it right. So recently we have been brewing more hazy and New England styles, but in a way that we want to taste them. So again, drinkability being key. So we're not putting out tippers or dippers. It's very much aimed at pub culture and something that somebody could sit down and enjoy a half or a pint of, and it not being out of the ordinary. So I understand people turning up for events for hype beer releases, but we want people to trust that whatever beer they're going to get from us on the bar, we've thought about it, we've put time into making it something that they can just come in and enjoy on a Tuesday after work or on a Saturday with their mates or whenever it is. Basically, there's no gimmicks with Blackjack. So where we sit in the scene is, I guess, pretty like down to earth brewery that want to make beer for people to drink with their mates and enjoy, but that is of a really high quality. It's been amazing to see what breweries like Track and Cloudwater have done, but we're not quite them. So while we are brewing some New England beers, we've kind of carved out our own niche, certainly in making great traditional beers. And now I think lager is where I'm most proud of what we're making. There aren't loads of people in Manchester making a lot of lagers, so there's definitely a spot there which we're sort of filling at the moment, I think.
I think that comes across actually with just not only what you're saying, but while we're talking, I just had a quick look on your web shop, and it's an extensive web shop. Obviously, we've got 6 beers that we're talking about, but as you sort of touched on there's other beers. But all the description is it might be the style, the percentage, and then it's a can. There's no like, this has got the latest experimental hop in it and it's double dry hopped, or it's a triple, or it's just, this is the beer, this is the style. And as you say, you're just going for that idea of it's no nonsense. Sounds really, I'm not trying to downplay it at all, but it's there, like you say, and you drink it and you enjoy it. And then if you like it enough, you go, oh, shall I have a look and see if I'll buy a 6-pack?
That's it, because there was so many breweries work on a model where they're putting out so many new beers, and a lot of them are tasting very, very similar. So you're getting 2 or 3 new releases a week, but they're all relatively similar style hazy beers, which is a fine model, and there's room for everybody to do their own thing in that world. But for us, it just didn't make a whole lot of sense. And it was to have these products that people would keep coming back to and remember the name of. And yeah, that being said, like breweries like Track have also done a brilliant job. So Sonoma is the most synonymous with Manchester beer out there probably. And that sort of style is where we're at. So while we're different in some of the beers we're making, I think that a lot of the ethos behind the breweries will be similar. I mean, we're good friends. It's nice that everybody's got their own path, because there are a lot of drinkers that do want something new every week, and that's not something we can do. Well, it's something that we could do, but it's not what we want to do. So to be able to go to Pomona and get a new sour every week is absolutely great for some people. So yeah, it's nice that everyone has a slightly different angle on where beer's going, I guess.
You just spoke about the ethos there, and I was going to say, if you're putting out something that you'll want essentially to do the same again and again, I guess everyone does buy into that, or is there a bit of, well, can we just do something a bit different this time? Or is everyone just like, no, let's just go for making consistently good beer rather than experimental beer?
I guess with our beers that we're putting out again and again, the idea is constant refinement. So yeah, these recipes aren't going to stick in stone each time. It's like, what can we slightly change on that to make it, even with the core beers, is constant refinement. And that's been a big focus for the brewery over the last couple of years, is that refinement, because in the past, I think Blackjack has had a reputation for being inconsistent, which in the early days we were. So 12, 13 years ago when the brewery opened, working on really a kit that was not kind of up to scratch to make the sort of beers that we're drinking today. I remember drinking Blackjack beers back then because the tap room's just around the corner from where I live. So I was drinking a lot of them, and I kind of knew that they weren't all going to hit the spot. It's come a long way in that time. Whereas I think some breweries have hit the ground running, some of the more modern breweries, when there has been that investment from the get-go in really high-quality brew kit and everything. Whereas Blackjack started with just one bloke and he just wanted to make some beer, and it has sort of spiraled from there. So it's a funny company, really, because I do feel like there's probably some people that still associate us with the old days where they might have had a pint that wasn't a 10 out of 10 exceptional. So at the moment, a lot of what I'm certainly trying to do is make people understand where Blackjack are at the moment, because that's where I got to at Behemoth, and that made me want to come and work for them, is to see that journey.
That's really interesting, isn't it? Because a lot of those Manchester breweries have got their niches, and they've got massive reputations as well. Like you said, with the Track, with Sonoma and Cloudwater, for all their different styles of beers over the years. It feels as though almost, to me and Dave, who are away from Manchester in a different part of the country, that Blackjack is almost one of the forgotten breweries of Manchester.
It's not a nice way to think about it, but you're right. In a way, we have been overlooked, I think, in recent years in terms of quality because of the journey and some people wanting the newest and the latest, or maybe still remembering when we put out a dodgy pint 10 years ago or whatever. There's a slight underdog mentality, I think. We are really prominent in the Manchester scene, but outside of Manchester, I think a lot of people don't really know what Blackjack are up to.
You hit the nail on the head then with the word journey, and it really comes across that it's been a journey from one man starting with his dubious brew kit to where you are now. Having just drunk the Vienna lager there, which is all gone at my end, I don't even particularly like Vienna lagers, but I really enjoyed that. It was really good.
I'm with you. I've finished kit. I've cracked the next one. I haven't started it yet. I'm waiting. I'm being patient.
What have you cracked?
We can talk about two at once, I think, because I think I saw Dave go for the Italian one there, but I've cracked the dark lager.
Yeah, Italian Pils is a funny old style of beer, really. I think it originated from a attempt at brewing a German-style Hells that went a little wrong. And the Italian brewery involved kind of heavily dry hopped it. So as far as I can work out, defining sort of style of the Italian Pils is this dry hop character. Some of them lean much more into the German style and noble hops, but for this one, we've gone super modern. So we've dry hopped it primarily with Enigma hop, which has given it a super juicy, fruity flavour.
It smells really clean and vibrant to me. When I opened the can, I could smell it straight off.
Yeah, it's one of my favourite beers that we put out recently, because I think that it's got that, as you say, it's got that clean, crisp lager, sunshine feel, but then this modern hop on top, which is just giving loads of fruit flavour. And it's just a really nice sort of marrying of something that your pale ale drinkers might like with something that your more traditional lager drinkers. Yeah, certainly if I am at a bar and somebody's asking about it and they're not keen on lagers, but they like a pale ale, this kind of getting into IPL territory for me in a good way.
God, that's a style I haven't heard for a while.
No, not me.
It's really gone out of fashion. IPLs, but the idea of having this really aromatic hop on top of a crisp base is actually something that is super delicious. So yeah, with this one, we kind of went all in with the dry hop, and yeah, you can taste it.
I'd be keen to see if you guys wanted to do an IPL, because for me, they feel a bit of a throwback from almost 8-10 years ago. They were kind of around briefly, and then no one does them anymore. But brewing processes and everything have probably changed so much. I reckon they could be quite an interesting beer to be brewed now. You could sort of do quite a lot more, I think, with it than was what was done previously. Dave's having an Italian summer over there. I'm drinking a beer probably more in tune with what time of night it is. This feels like I should be drinking it in the autumn, not the spring. And also, we were talking about IPLs. This almost starts heading towards a black IPA, and then it just pulls up at the last minute and finishes off as a lager, the dark lager, I find.
This is Squalor that we're talking about now. It's a German Schwarz beer, essentially. So a lot of our beers are named after sort of areas around where we're brewing. The brewery itself is located next to Angel Meadows in Manchester, which is incredibly famous for being a really deprived area in the Victorian era. So lots of poverty, and it was slums, really. So we are brewing from a site which is just away from where these people would have been living in pretty horrible conditions. And the name Squalor comes from a quote, which is salvation and squalor. It's about the state of the area at that time. So we have a beer called Salvation as well. Squalor's a sort of a nod to the history of the area, because although it's not a pleasant history, we kind of felt that as a brewery setting up shop in this part of Manchester, to ignore that wouldn't be right, really. So although some people say it's off-putting, Squalor,
it's a nod to Manchester's past, isn't it?
It is.
I mean, you're very proud to be from Manchester, so you want to play on as many links as you can, don't you?
100%. When people are talking Manchester, it often kind of gets into stereotypes. But when we're talking about Manchester, we're thinking about a long period of time and how people would have been, what they would have been doing on the land where we're brewing now 100 years or more ago. So we wanted to really acknowledge Manchester's history and the history of the very specific area where we are.
And it works obviously because it's like you say, it's not necessarily a bit of history you want to shine a light on, but it's one that's worth doing. So it makes sense to have a dark lager because it's sort of a slightly dark past, I guess. And I really like this, but it does require a bit of drinking. If someone's come in and have had the Hellas before this, it's a big departure, isn't it? It's probably about as big a shift as you can go through lager from light to dark. Like if you had this after your Italian one,
I'm going to do that, so we'll see.
Okay.
Yeah, I think of the six, this is the most different. I mean, being dark as a lager in general is always going to be a tougher sell. So to be completely candid, like Squalor isn't one of our biggest selling beers. It doesn't always fly out. Like it sells perfectly well, but another brewery might look at it and go, oh, you know what? We don't really need to do that. But actually, this is one of our favorite beers that we brew. It's linked to the local area, and so there's no way that we're dropping it. It's one of those beers that has got so much love behind it from the brew team, and actually, as you say, it's quite a departure from going from Italian Pils to it, but we have managed to convince quite a lot of regulars to kind of, I think it's more your dark beer drinkers than your lager drinkers that are coming to this one, and will be having more than one pint of it, because although it's a massive departure from an Italian Pils, from a stout, it's fresh and light and crisp, if anything.
It's definitely got stout element to it, and black IPA. The black IPA thing is what I really pick out in the middle of drinking it when it's probably at its sort of roastiest and maltiest. Yeah. And then, as I say, it levels off to a lager finish. It's very nice. I'm with you. Like I like drinking a dark lager and a sort of Schwartz beer. If I was placing an order from sort of a European beer place and getting lots of lagers, as I do from time to time, I wouldn't fill the box with Schwartz beers. One or two.
You'd put some in there though, wouldn't you?
I would put some in there, but I wouldn't fill the box. But they are a nice thing to have from time to time, because it does just show. I think it shows what you guys are doing. It shows the range of what you can do with a lager and just how much there is to it.
One question I wanted to ask was, you mentioned the brew team a few times. How many people do Blackjack employ? Often, as outsiders looking into the industry, we'll see a brewery and think, oh, they're really big, they must have loads of employees. Often they don't, so I'm really fascinated to know.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's a small brew team, so there are 4 brewers, and we are looking to hire another one. So it's very small.
Well, if you're looking to hire, things are going well. So it's always a good sign.
No, yeah, 100%. It's a really small, tight-knit group of people that are sort of committed to beer. Yeah, you're right. It's people talk about breweries and you imagine this sort of great sort of factory work of people behind the scenes brewing, but actually it's a small group of people for the most part that are working on it. And yeah.
Are they exchanging ideas all the time and working together, or is one brewer responsible for a couple of beers and the next brewer is responsible for these couple of beers? How does it work?
Yes, we've changed things up recently, actually. We used to have a very solid brew schedule, so we'd know in September we're going to be brewing the Vienna Lager. In January we're going to be brewing this, and we'd have that calendar set in stone, which we have done away with recently, and we are brewing much more to, I guess, the needs of the customer. But it also means that the brew team have freedom to experiment with different beers. So
it's what the big companies call being agile these days.
100%. So we weren't agile before. We had this setup where we knew exactly what we were going to brew throughout the year. We knew we had to get our core beers done, but the seasonal releases were really set in stone. Whereas in the last 6 months, we've ripped that up and we've gone, you know what, we're going to brew to what we one, to what's selling, because we have to survive as a brewery, and two, to give us more leeway to lean into ideas that are interesting. So we brew a beer that we really like. If we've got this schedule set in stone and the opportunity to brew something like that only comes up again in a year's time, it doesn't allow the brew team any creativity, really.
I think that's really important as well, because any brewer wants to feel as though they're still being creative. Even it doesn't matter how long they've been in a role for or what they're making, they got into it in the first place because they're creative people and they want to keep making these different types of beer. So they need to feel that way.
Yeah, exactly. And to be sort of dictated a brew schedule by the directors of the company or whatever, and you're brewing this for the next year, it doesn't give people the opportunity they need to really push things forward. So even in the last year or so since we've changed things up, it's been giving the brew team more power, has made Blackjack a better company as a whole. Yeah, putting the power into the hands of it's split between the brew team and I guess we don't have a sales team per se. I do quite a lot of the sales, and we're not a setup like a lot of modern breweries have. What we really want to reflect is a trade list that's going out that is exciting to whichever bar manager is looking at it on a Monday morning. To think about it in that way, this is where my experience working at Beer Muffin in bars previously has sort of come in, is to help with that and to go, as a bar manager, what would I want Blackjack's list to look like?
You can see it from the wider perspective, can't you?
Yeah, when you're a brewer, it's hard to you see outside that, but it's great to be able to work with the brew team and go, hey, you know what? What we really need is a new seasonal lager, and this is a sort of brief. What can you guys do? Or we'd like a really nice new light cask pale ale, something a bit experimental, whatever hops you want to use, but you go for it. And that wasn't something that we could really do before with the forward planning, because it was so regimented that, to open it up has been great for the brewery. While I talk about us making drinkable beers and beers of people, it's not that we don't want to experiment. We do at the same time. So it gives that scope to do both, really.
We talked before about the juxtaposition of the Italian pills to the dark lager. Well, I've just finished the pills, which was... I'm not a massive lager drinker, but I'm really enjoying these, and they're going down really well. The pills for me is that Italian pills. I'm imagining that I've been in the garden and I've just cut the lawn. I want a nice beer now to relax in the deck chair. That is the perfect beer for that.
100% sunshine, drinking, like joyful. As you say, after you've done some hard work and you get that big hit of tropical hops, but it's so crisp and easy to drink. It's
It's exactly what it was designed for. But then I've opened the dark lager and I've been transported from summer to somewhere between bonfire night and Christmas. And I can see exactly where you're coming from, Dave, with the black IPA thing. I'm getting that completely, and the sort of the roastiness of it as well. I feel as though I need to be sitting either watching fireworks or sitting next to an open fire while I'm drinking this. And it's amazing because they're both lagers, but so different.
I think that's probably what we sort of tried to get across as a point of this conversation. This is why I got in touch with yourself, Matt, because it's one thing to have 6 lagers on your rotation, but to then actually, like what we've done tonight, and go through a bit and see just exactly what you can do with it. But I don't know another brewery in the UK doing this, and it's so good to see it shine a light on what there is within one style, which is probably just pushed away as like can do one thing only.
Yeah, 100%. And I think people are getting more switched on to, but as a craft beer drinker, you could drink lager all year round, really, as we've shown, because the style has so much breadth, and for so long it was seen as this one note beer that is completely the opposite, really. It has more breadth than a pale ale does.
I'd never really thought of that before, but that really has come across tonight. Well, there's definitely a different lager for each season, and almost a different lager for each month of the year, you know, if you want to extend that a little bit further.
The lager that we're missing from this 6 is actually a summer lager, which we do, which is called Tilda, which is an American light lager. So quite a lot of rice in the grist, and just super, super light, and even easier drinking than the Hells and the Pills. So we go even further. It tastes great, but you wouldn't have anybody, I think, giving it a 5 out of 5 on Untapped, because those sort of styles, an American light lager is just not seen as credible against other things. Whereas actually it serves a purpose, and when it's made well, it can be delicious.
Well, you say that your neighbours do a collab with people down my way, Duration, the Duration Cloudwater American Light at Good Times. That is a brilliant beer. It's a brilliant beer.
It is a brilliant beer. I'm a huge Duration fan, so I like that you chopped them in, because their lagers, certainly for me, it's someone that I like to think that we can kind of sit aside, because they do lagers in a way that is similar to us. And you're right, yeah, they made this American light lager, and it's unpretentious, it's unfussy, it's just really nice and drinkable, and it's that sort of thing from the beer scene that I really like. So Cloudwater teaming up with Duration to make something that would have been seen 10 years ago as sort of rubbish is brilliant, in my opinion.
Well, if Tilda is half as good as that, then it must be a good beer, because as I say, that's one of my favourites.
So at this point, I usually ask, what does the future hold for a specific brewery? So what does the future hold for Blackjack? What does Blackjack want to achieve in the next 12 months, 18 months, 2 years? Where do you see yourselves going?
That's a good question. With Blackjack, the plans have never been to expand massively and become a sort of behemoth of the scene or anything. But what I'd like is for us to be recognised outside of Manchester. So while locally we're well regarded, it would be really nice to be recognised throughout the country. So we're going to keep putting out beers to the same standard as we are at the moment, still experimenting. But I think, if anything, it is me that's got a job to be doing a bit of sales and sort of pushing us outside of the locality, because I do think we have a lot to offer.
I've got to say, I've been very pleasantly surprised this evening. These beers are excellent. And I've not had much Blackjack. I've had maybe some at a few festivals over the last couple of years, but not a great deal. But it's a really pleasant surprise. I don't know about you, Dave.
I think I've had even less. I think we had some guests on years ago, and I do mean years ago, with the podcast. They wanted to shine a light on how many breweries there were in Manchester, and they were doing craft beer in a box where they'd got beers from all the different breweries. And I remember there was some Blackjack in there, and I don't really remember the beers. They weren't that remarkable at that stage, but that's going back a few years. And then I saw the post you guys did, well, it sounds like you did, on Instagram about all these lagers, and just that was where this stemmed from, essentially. Yeah, I mean, I want to try the pales again now. I mean, I think it was maybe one pale I had. I want to try what else you guys do. So, but I'm down in Suffolk, which I guess is what you're sort of suggesting. You want to get those beers out to people like me who live down the other end of the country more.
We want to be doing what Cloudwater and Track are doing in terms of reaching people and getting people to drink great beer and beer that we really believe in. So it's been lovely to talk to you about these lagers, because it isn't something that always comes up so much in conversation. People want to talk about the newest sort of thing, but actually, to be able to get these beers into people's hands around the country is where I'd like to be at.
And if people listening to this now want to get hold of some of these lagers, how do they go about doing it?
You can get on our web shop. All the lagers that we've spoken about are available there. If you do have any independent bottle shops that are near you, hopefully they might have something Blackjack, or you can always give them a nudge if you like.
What have we been drinking recently? But more to the point, what have we been enjoying the most? This is time for Tried and Tested now on Daftaboutcraft. Dave, over to you.
Got a little bit hit, obviously, as I mentioned at the top of the show, by illness, which took a few days out for me. And when I felt well enough, I went to the fridge and I thought, I do fancy a beer, but I don't know if my throat's a bit messed up and how it's going to go down. So I thought I'll try one and see how we go. And I'm glad I did, because it was from Pretty Decent Beer Co., who I think I should get more of their beers, because I like their beers when I have them. I just don't quite see them enough around. And this was the Complete History of Knots, which was a pale ale. Did say it's double dry hopped. I didn't massively get that for a 5% beer. It wasn't that dry hopped, but I did get all the hops that were involved more or less, which was Citra Lupamax, Nelson Sauvin, and Galaxy, and it was just a really nice pale. The other beer I want to mention, and it's probably the one I should say is my tried and tested, because it is really tried and tested, but it was more occasion than it was the beer itself. A few days ago, we went out Sunday, family time, went to a pub, Swan in Stratford St Mary, who've been featured on here before. They've got a real European heritage and seem to be leaning into that more and more on the taps. You know, there was 4 German beers, I think, 3 Belgian beers. We haven't gone for a while because, truth be told, I found their tap rotation was getting quite slow and it wasn't that exciting. But I think they got about 13, 15 taps, and it was a bit, they do a lot of food, and I could see I was sort of playing to that a bit more perhaps than trying to rotate. But what they did have on was Brasserie Dupont, and I thought, well, and it was a paper label, and I thought, well, okay, what Brasserie Dupont beer is it? Because Saison Dupont is the main one, but I don't know. Anyway, the member of staff at that point just said, oh, it's 6.5%. I was like, that's fine, don't worry about that. So I had a pint of it, and it was Saison Dupont. However, I don't remember it tasting like that, and I hadn't had it on keg before. Really full, really fruity, far more of a wheat beer in style than I remember it ever being, and just really, really, really good. I wish I'd have had maybe 2 or 3 pints of it. Probably wouldn't have been a good idea, but to the point that I was sort of idly thinking, oh, do I want to buy some more bottles of Saison Dupont and get that in? So for me, Saison Dupont, if you haven't had it for a long time, or if you've never had it, go get it in bottles. But if you can find a Belgian place that got it on tap, definitely try that. And History of Knots by Pretty Decent Beer Co. What about yourself?
Well, I went to Manchester recently. English beer gentleman, you listeners may know from social media, he'd been given a couple of tickets for Christmas to a craft beer tour of Manchester. And he said, why don't you come along with me? So I did. We'd booked it up and I went along with him, and we did a little tour of Manchester with craftbeertours.co.uk. This isn't a plug, by the way. Nobody's paying us to do this. I'm just saying who it was and why I was there. And we went to a few places, started off at Fell Brewery, their tap room in the Northern Quarter, moved on to Cloudwater, Sure Shot and Balance. And it was at Balance that I had my favourite beers. So for those who may not know, Balance specialise in wild fermented stuff, the sort of stuff that we've been talking about a little bit more recently. And we had 2 beers while we were there, and you can take your pick which one is my tried and tested, because they were both great. I had one called Ripple, which was a blend of 2 barrels from August and December 2021, fermented with Saison yeast, lactobacillus and Brettanomyces before aging for 2 months on macerated British raspberries. Sounds amazing. Was amazing. The other one was Saison de Maison. So, interestingly enough, strange how things work, isn't it? Which was a mixed culture barrel fermented Saison dry hop with British Goldings. It was funky and spritzy, and there was pineapple and gingerbread and peach and peri pear. It's so different. When you've been drinking lots of pales and you go into a place like this and you have something so different, it stands out. And they were just great. And the guys there were really, really, really friendly. And they want to come on the podcast as well, which is also great news.
That's very exciting, because Balance has sort of been in the back of my mind as a brewery that I really want to try. You talked there about how our tastes are changing a bit. You've been quicker to start dabbling in this more and more, but I said to you recently I placed a beer order and I looked at what I had, and then I saw Holy Goat and I thought, you know what, I'm going to go for it. And I've got 2 Holy Goats I've got 3 Holy Goats in fact, because there's a double chocolate orange stout which I keep looking at and keep not picking up. Anyway, I got 3 Holy Goats sat in the fridge, which never would have happened even a year ago. So yeah, I'm getting there. All of a sudden, you know, this could be a Gertzaboon episode special in about 6 months' time or something.
Yeah, we won't be drinking hoppy pales anymore. It'll all be this wild fermented stuff and Belgian style saisons. Well, let's follow up on that with Balance and get them on the podcast, because they're really interested and their beers are amazing. We went into the tap room and it was just a lovely cool place, and they couldn't do enough for us on this tour. They showed us the little brewery there, loads going on. No, I was very impressed, and the beers really impressed me too. So yeah, watch this space. Let's get them on the podcast.
Nice.
Daftaboutcraft, powered by Craft Brew Festival.
And now it's time for Hype or Tripe.
I'm a bit worried, Dave, because it's such a favourite beer of ours.
There is a bit of trepidation with this. As I said at the start, like I don't think it's going to go wrong. And it might just be that it's fine, but I prefer the original. And I think I'd take that.
We had a lovely box turn up each of us
We did.
from Titanic. Little message inside says, thanks so much for your interest in our brand new Plum Porter Nitro. Using the same recipe as our award-winning flagship beer, these cans are injected with nitrogen to create a smoother, creamier taste. Chill in the fridge, which I have done, and when you're ready, invert the can twice before pouring hard and fast into a glass to enjoy. So, let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's do.
Yep.
Let's open it and then pour fast and see what happens. Both doing it. The contents are coming out into, I've got a pint glass and McCracken's pint glass. Nice.
I didn't.
Oh, I can smell it. Can you smell it?
I can smell it. I didn't think far enough ahead again to go for a pint glass. I've got a decent enough glass that it's come out and it's poured a massive head, which is what I would expect, which is settling down. There is that distinctive plum porter nose, which is a great sign.
We're showing signs of trepidation because when something's really great, you think, do you need to fix it? Do you need to tinker with it?
Exactly. That's the worry, isn't it? I mean, I think we should get stuck in while there's still the head, because I think the head is part of the nitro sort of experience, isn't it?
First off, I expect it to be kind of creamy. Guinness Nitro and John Smith's Nitro.
The one that always springs to my mind, and it's going back a few years when they weren't Boo Hiss Boo. Brewdog did a beer which they actually put in supermarkets called Roaster Coaster, which was a nitro. That was really good, and it really benefited from nitro, making it this sort of smooth roast coffee beer. That was good. What I think they've done, because I've had plum porter in cans, and hand on heart, that was the most disappointing plum porter I've had. I didn't actually enjoy that. I much prefer it either in bottle or on cask. I think the nitro has rectified the can for me.
Right, you're a step ahead because I've never had it in a can. How long have they done that for then?
Can's been about for a little while. I remember that because it was a 330 and I'm going back. Funnily enough, we got these cans from your neck of the woods where the Coracle is.
Oh, okay, yeah, Ironbridge.
There's those shops to the right if you're coming back down the hill, and there's a gin and beer shop in there.
I know the one.
Got cans from there. So probably going back now 4 years maybe. So they've had cans out for a while, and I remember having the cans and being a bit underwhelmed because it didn't really feel like it was that true plum porter flavour. It felt a little synthetic. This feels like true plum porter. What do you think?
For me, plum porter varies massively depending on where you drink it. Sometimes it has a bitter edge to it, which is no reflection on the beer because the beer doesn't. It's more a reflection on the places that serve it, which we can identify with. I'm not sure all punters do, but that can happen. This is lovely and rounded, and that fruitiness really comes through. I just expected, because of the nitro, maybe a tiny bit more body with it.
You tried it again. My second sip was very different to my first in terms of that creaminess.
Oh, okay, right, okay. I had a very big sip to start with.
You certainly did.
Oh, yeah.
It's coming back in it's rounding out full in the back, isn't it?
All right, okay, yeah. I maybe take that back then. By this stage in my glass, the head is all gone. You've still got some, look. I haven't got that.
My head is retained, and each sip I'm taking, that nitro bubble lacing and that full creaminess, it doesn't suddenly make it a completely new beer. It's just adding another layer onto it. I like this. The first sip I was a bit, okay, it's plum porter and it's a bit better in a can, as I was sort of saying, but now I'm starting to get a different version of plum porter, which is obviously what they've intended to do.
Okay, yeah, that second sip has made me think better of it now. I liked it, but I was a bit... having had 2 or 3 sips now, I like that. There seems to be more, weirdly enough, seems to be more body to it now. I mean, it's not thick or anything, it's the consistency you would expect it to be, but it tastes like it's got more depth to it on the second or third swig.
You know, when you've spoken before where there can be that bitterness at the end of it, the nitro is now at the end of it. That's sort of replaced it.
There's very little bitterness. It's kind of fruit at the front, and then it just fades away to, sometimes, like I say, it can be bitterness, but that isn't there this time.
I think it's actually quite a good way of introducing people going the other way. You know, we've talked at length about people who come from cask, trying to get them to try craft. Well, if you were someone who's gone from drinking maybe macro to go to craft and then looks at cask and traditional as a bit bleh, this is actually quite a good bridge, I would say, because I would say you'd have this and then you go, oh, and if you get this on tap somewhere, oh, it's even better. And they go, really? And you go, yeah. You have it on tap in the right place. And this is even better again because the fruit comes through a little bit more and it's just that little bit different in flavour and a bit fuller. But this works really well. I'm really pleased. They've actually created something quite clever.
Should just say that this is to commemorate Titanic's 40th birthday. So they've been going since 1985.
Some of us are also 40 this year.
I was just thinking you must be around 40 now, yeah?
I'm 40 this year.
We're having a Daftaboutcraft party and inviting all of our listeners to it.
I can think of one listener who would go but would have to make a long journey down and he'll know who he is.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a very clever thing to do for your 40th birthday, put a new twist on it. I'd never had plum porter until you used to be banging on about it all the time. Then I had it on cask, and then I've had it in bottle, then I've had the Grand Reserve and all the different incarnations of it. And yeah, I'm glad I've tried that. It is good.
When you compare 40, it just makes you realise how still in its infancy craft beer is in some ways. These guys have been going decades. But it would have been easy to do like the Grand Reserve, something different-ish with it, and perhaps they will, and a slightly different version of plum. Do you know what I mean? They could have gone for quite safe options just to market, but actually a nitro is quite different and not necessarily a medium that is used all that much.
Worth saying, actually, I went into a pub the other day and they'd got not their plum porter, but their cherry porter on cask, which I had. That was very good.
Yeah, again, works best on cask from what I've had. I have had that in can a few years ago and that didn't quite hit the mark then. Could have easily changed by now, and I don't get to see that one that often round here, if at all.
Excellent. Well, we should just hear from David Glenwright from Titanic, who sent us a voice note to explain all about this version of plum porter and about their 40th anniversary.
Our founder, John Pazio, when he started Titanic Brewery back in 1985, he probably would never in a million years have thought that 40 years down the line, Titanic Brewery's flagship beer would be a flavoured speciality porter. But here we are. That's exactly what plum porter is. It's Titanic's flagship beer. It was first brewed in 2011 as a one-off speciality guest beer. It was one-off seasonal beer. That was always the original plan with it, but it proved to be a instant smash hit. Drinkers in our pubs couldn't get enough of it, and it went from being a one-off seasonal to being part of the regular lineup. And then in 2015, it won the speciality category at the National Champion Beer of Britain Awards, and it's just snowballed from there really, and it's reached a point where today plum porter makes up over half of the volume of beer that we brew at Titanic every year, and it is probably largely thanks to plum porter that Titanic today is the largest brewer by volume of stouts and porters in England. So yeah, to say that plum porter is popular, I think in some cases might be putting it a bit mildly. So when we started exploring doing something a bit different with plum porter, we were a little hesitant at first, a little cautious. Yeah, this is a very popular drink with many people, and we didn't want to mess with that too much, but we wanted to make just a little tweak to the beer so that it could be enjoyed in a different way. And that little tweak, quite simply, is nitrogen. Nitrogen bubbles, so much smaller than CO2 bubbles, and dispensing beer via nitrogen gives you this wonderful silky texture and this tight, rich, creamy head. It's something that's synonymous in pubs with stouts. Our own True Stout has been dispensed by nitro for a long time. And so we thought, well, let's try it. Let's try doing a kegged version of plum porter and dispensing it via nitro, and that has been an instant popular hit with those that are drinking it. So the logical next step was for us to do it as a can. So the nitro cans of plum porter, and there's no widgets or anything in them, but each can of plum porter is injected with nitrogen. So you have to shake it a couple of times just to activate that nitrogen, and then pour hard and fast into the glass, having chilled the beer nice and cold previously. And what you get is the same familiar flavours of plum porter, so that classic porter bitterness, tempered out with this sweet plummy nose and these plummy notes that follow all the way through to the aftertaste. That nitrogen just gives it a whole new texture. As I say, it's silky smooth, a nice tight, rich head as well. It's plum porter, but just taken to a different place. Personally, I think it's a fantastic interpretation of the beer, and I think it's going to make a fantastic summer barbecue beer for someone that does prefer a bit of a darker beer rather than a traditional lager that you might have during the summer. So yeah, plum porter nitro, enjoy.
Thank you very much, David. That's really appreciated to find out all about the beer and also about Titanic as well. And it's amazing how a brewery that is 4 decades old can still keep finding ways to innovate, isn't it?
It is, and it's good that they want to. It's sort of similar to when we spoke to Hobson's, and they were keen to do so much more than just get sort of stuck in the past almost. You have to keep thinking ahead because the scene has changed so much, continues to change. I think we've sort of seen in the last few months, if anything, I feel like cask and craft have probably never been closer. Don't know. I don't think that's a wild statement to make.
We said before about, we should just enjoy beer rather than putting it into categories. And more, those sort of lines are becoming blurred, I think, between cask and craft.
Previously, we'd look at a guest and it'd be like, right, okay, so they've got to be a craft brewer, like, as in the sense of what's the beer range? Is it all, nothing traditional, Now I'm almost starting to head the other way and sort of have a look at them and go, okay, well, what do they do? And do they do modern twists on this stuff? And like, that could be quite interesting to talk about and find out about. As you say, beer is essentially beer.
Yeah, I've been out and about recently with Craft Brew Festival, one of our sponsors, and they had their first event recently in Sheffield. And just speaking to brewers, there's a mix of brewers who make predominantly cask, then some others who make keg beer. And really, it's just beer that we all need to enjoy, no matter what way it's distributed, bottles, cans, cask, keg, who cares, actually, as long as it's good beer.
To bring it full circle, credit to Titanic, because they are trying to bridge the two there, and I think they've done an excellent job with this beer. The reputation of plum porter remains intact for me. They've not cheapened it, they've not ruined it. They've actually, for me, they've enhanced it, because if they made this a staple, I know now that I can enjoy it on cask, I can enjoy the big bottles, and if I want the can and I want something a bit different, I can enjoy the nitro.
Daftaboutcraft, brought to you with mosaic board print, makers of supreme beer mats.
Daftaboutcraft, the craft beer podcast.